slavery under Mosaic law does not share any resemblance of modern slavery. And I say modern slavery, I say slavery that took place in this country pre-Civil War, okay? Modern slavery that's happening right now through human trafficking for both sex workers and also for labor. It's happening now. We have folks in our church, John and Melissa King, who are part of an organization that's actively fighting against that. Slavery under Mosaic law did not in any way represent what we know as slavery both in this country and other parts of the world even now. So the first thing you have to understand about Old Testament slavery in Israel, Israelite slavery, that God sanctioned, the first thing you have to understand is it was nothing like pre-Civil War slavery, okay, in this country. The slavery that our forefathers are guilty of was a death penalty offense in the Old Testament. Let me say it again. The slavery that our forefathers are guilty of was a death penalty offense in the Old Testament. Under Mosaic law, Exodus chapter 21, verse 16. And again, I would tell you, read this week. Read the entire chapter. But look at the guidelines for how slavery worked. Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of that stolen man shall be put to death. Do you understand that covers every single person in the slave trade pre-Civil War? That covers every person involved in it. That covers the one who stole them originally from their countries, who shipped them across the ocean, who purchased them at a slave market, and who brought them home. That was a death penalty offense in the Old Testament for stealing a man and selling him. And anybody found in possession of that stolen man would be put to death under Old Testament law. So the slave trader, the purchaser, the plantation owner, all would have been met with death under Old Testament law. The Old Testament patriarchs, okay, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, though they lived 3,000 years prior to the United States and slavery that took place, they would have immediately recognized what we did as a country as pure evil. They would have immediately recognized it. So if you couldn't steal slaves, how would you get them? How would you get them if you couldn't steal slaves? How was slavery different exactly, Jason? Well, I'm glad you asked, but just so we're counting, that's your third and fourth question, okay? So we're way over the limit, but we'll just keep going. The primary source of slavery in the Old Testament, all right, in Old Testament Israel was what we called indentured service. That's why you often see the word in more modern translations, because it's more accurate, bondservant. Okay? It was indentured service. So that was the primary source of slaves in the Old Testament, or bond service, was this indentured service. Another source was people found guilty of significant theft. They didn't just put them in a prison to just rot away for a nonviolent crime for the 20 healthiest years of their life. They put them into indentured service where they still received a wage and they still paid back for what they stole. So these are two primary sources of slavery in Old Testament Israel. And the first thing you have to understand about ancient time, I don't mean just in Israel, the ancient world. The first thing you have to understand is it's nothing like our modern times. So if you incurred a debt, if maybe perhaps you're a small farmer, you're not attached to a clan, which clan and tribal living was everything in all of the ancient world like at this time, and if you were a small farmer on your own, not attached to a great clan, or your clan was really small, and a great drought happened or a great disaster, and you lost all your crops, you had nothing. There's no Medicaid, right? There's no welfare. There's no food stamps. You've got nothing. You are going to die. So then what would you do? Well, you would go to somebody that had more money, maybe like a creditor, but maybe a wealthy patriarch, a wealthy tribe leader, and you would ask them to loan you money. And then you would hope that then your crops, that with that money you could once again plant and harvest your crops, and that harvest would be enough to both provide for your family and also pay off your debt. But if that didn't happen, and if a second year of drought or disaster came, and your crops are ruined, now you owe a lot of money to powerful people, and there's no way to pay for it. There aren't credit cards. There aren't bankruptcy laws. This is all of the ancient world. If you had a debt you couldn't pay in most of the ancient world, you were just immediately at the mercy of the person that credited you that money or loaned you that money. So what almost always happened, right, or what happened often was it meant a beating, and it meant like a debtor's prison. Okay, that's what it meant. So think about that. You already can't pay your debt. And now what takes place is you can't pay your debt even though you're trying to work, and maybe you're the only worker in your family. And then on top of it, you're put now into a debtor's prison where you are beaten often. Why can't you pay? Pay up. I didn't have money when you put me in here, and now I don't have money that you broke my arm. Like, how am I going to pay up? But that's what people did. This is how it worked in the ancient world. What possible hope would you ever have of paying off a debt in that situation? The answer is zero. You have no hope. So here comes God, right, with the people of Israel. Here comes the Mosaic law, and here comes God on the scene, and he enacts mercy for indentured servants. He says, that is not how that's going to work with my people. And he gave indentured servants rights like this, Exodus chapter 21, verse 2. The first one you have to understand, when you buy a Hebrew slave, he will serve 6 years, and in the 7th year, he will go out free for nothing.